My name is Sarah, and I was 8 months pregnant when a single phone call shattered the life I thought I had. Until that evening, everything felt almost perfect. I was in our nursery, carefully folding tiny baby clothes that still smelled new, smiling as I imagined holding my daughter for the first time. Soft music played in the background, and I caught myself humming without even realizing it. I truly believed I was living the happiest chapter of my life. I had a loving husband, a baby on the way, and a future that finally felt safe. Looking back now, I wish I could freeze time right there because just a few seconds later, everything I believed would be destroyed. Then my phone rang. The screen showed an unknown number. Normally, I ignored calls from numbers I didn't recognize, especially that late in the evening. I almost pressed decline. I almost let it ring until it stopped. But something deep inside me told me to answer. To this day, I still wonder how different my life would have been if I hadn't. Ma'am, this is Officer Daniels. Am I speaking with Sarah Turner? The moment I heard the word officer, my heart began pounding so hard it hurt. Yes, I answered nervously. Is everything okay? There was a brief silence before he spoke again. Your husband, Michael Turner, has been taken to St. Mary's Hospital. There was an incident, and we need you to come immediately. My hands instantly went numb. What happened? I whispered, already terrified of the answer. I'm afraid I can't discuss the details over the phone. Please come as soon as possible. I didn't waste another second. My thoughts exploded into 100 terrifying possibilities. Maybe he'd been in a terrible accident. Maybe someone had attacked him. Maybe he was dying. I grabbed my purse and rushed toward the front door, but my hands were shaking so violently that I dropped my keys once, then twice. My breathing became uneven. Every second felt like an hour. I kept telling myself to stay calm for the baby growing inside me. Just before the officer ended the call, he quietly added something that completely changed everything. Ma'am, your husband wasn't alone. I froze. We found him with another woman. The line went dead. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. Those 7 words hit me harder than any physical pain ever could. 8 months pregnant, carrying our first child, driving toward a hospital where my husband had been found, with another woman. Suddenly, I wasn't just afraid that Michael might be hurt. I was terrified of discovering a truth I wasn't ready to face. The drive to the hospital is mostly a blur. I honestly don't remember stopping at red lights or turning corners. I only remember gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my fingers went white while tears blurred my vision. My daughter kicked inside my belly as if she could feel every wave of fear crashing through me. I kept praying over and over. Please, God, let there be an explanation. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe she was just a coworker. Maybe the officer had assumed the worst. I repeated those lies to myself because the alternative was too painful to imagine. When I finally reached St. Mary's Hospital, I barely remembered parking the car. I climbed out and ran toward the entrance as fast as someone 8 months pregnant possibly could. My yellow maternity dress clung to my body, soaked with sweat despite the cool evening air. Every breath felt shorter than the last, and one hand stayed protectively over my stomach the entire time, as though I could somehow shield my unborn baby from whatever heartbreak waited inside those walls. The bright hospital lights felt cold and unforgiving. A nurse standing behind the reception desk saw the panic written across my face before I even spoke. My husband, Michael Turner. I gasped between breaths. Without asking another question, she immediately came around the desk and gently guided me toward the elevators. This way, she said softly. The walk down the hallway felt endless. Every footstep echoed against the polished floor. Every passing doctor looked strangely serious. And with every step closer to room 214, the knot in my stomach tightened. Outside the room, a middle-aged doctor stepped into my path. His expression wasn't rushed or panicked. It was sympathetic. That frightened me even more. He looked directly into my eyes and spoke carefully. Mrs. Turner, before you go inside, I need to prepare you. I stared at him, confused. What you're about to see may be extremely upsetting. I almost laughed through my fear. What could possibly be worse than getting a phone call saying my husband was found with another woman? My voice cracked. Please, just let me see him. The doctor hesitated for a moment, then slowly nodded. Without another word, he reached for the curtain surrounding the hospital bed. My heart felt like it had stopped beating. The curtain slid open. There was Michael. He was lying in the hospital bed with bruises covering his face, a deep cut across his forehead hidden beneath a white bandage, and several monitors quietly beeping beside him. For one brief second, relief washed over me. He was alive. Then I noticed his hand. He wasn't alone. His fingers were tightly wrapped around the hand of a woman sitting beside his bed. She looked exhausted, frightened, and emotional. At first, I couldn't even process her face. Then she slowly turned toward me. The moment our eyes met, my entire world collapsed. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a coworker. It wasn't someone I'd never met. It was my younger sister, Emily. My knees nearly gave out beneath me. The room spun violently as I grabbed the doorframe to stop myself from falling. My baby kicked so hard it took my breath away, almost as if she could feel my heart breaking inside my chest. Every childhood memory with Emily flashed through my mind in an instant. Birthday parties, family vacations, late-night conversations, promises that sisters would always protect each other. Every one of those memories suddenly felt like a lie. Michael's face turned pale the moment he saw me. His eyes filled with panic. "Sarah?" he whispered desperately. "It's not what you think." But for the first time in our marriage, it was exactly what I thought. They had been together. Not by accident. Not because of bad timing. Because they had chosen each other behind my back. The police later explained that they had been involved in a car accident while driving together, an accident that never should have happened because they never should have been together in the first place. What I would eventually learn was even worse. Their relationship hadn't started days earlier or weeks earlier. It had been going on for months. Months of secret meetings. Months of lies. Months of stolen moments while I was home preparing our baby's nursery and believing I had the perfect family. I expected myself to scream. I expected tears. I expected anger. Instead, I felt absolutely nothing. No shouting. No crying. No dramatic confrontation. Just a strange, terrifying emptiness spreading through my chest. In that single moment, standing in the doorway of that hospital room, watching my husband hold my sister's hand instead of mine, something inside me quietly died. And I knew nothing about my life would ever be the same again. The days that followed passed in a haze of quiet devastation. I remember moving through the house like a ghost, doing the things I was supposed to do, eating when I could, attending my prenatal appointments, folding baby clothes, but I wasn't really there. My body kept moving, yet my heart felt frozen in that hospital room. I never confronted Michael or Emily that night. I simply turned around, walked out without saying a single word, and drove myself home. The silence hurt more than any argument ever could. That night, sleep never came. Instead, I sat alone at our kitchen table until sunrise, staring at a cup of tea that had long gone cold. My mind replayed every memory from the past year, and for the first time, I stopped making excuses for the things I had ignored. The late-night business trips Michael always claimed were unavoidable. The strange coincidence that Emily often seemed to be traveling during those exact same weeks. The countless family dinners they had both canceled for reasons that suddenly sounded identical. What once seemed like harmless coincidences now fit together like pieces of a puzzle I had been too trusting to solve. I remembered how Emily had slowly stopped answering my calls the way she used to. She always had an excuse. She was busy, tired, in a meeting, or about to call me back. Most of the time, she never did. I remembered how Michael would become strangely defensive whenever I asked simple questions about his schedule. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make me feel guilty for asking. Every time I questioned him, he somehow convinced me that I was overthinking things. And I believed him, because that's what trust does. It makes you doubt your instincts instead of doubting the people you love. While I spent my evenings painting the nursery, comparing cribs, and arguing with Michael over baby names, they had been building an entirely different life behind my back. Every smile, every family dinner, every holiday photo suddenly felt fake. Looking at the pictures on our living room wall made me wonder how many of those smiles had been lies. 2 days later, Michael came home from the hospital. His left arm was wrapped in a cast, and the bruises on his face had begun turning dark shades of purple and blue. For a brief second, I saw the man I had once loved, the man who had held my hand through morning sickness and promised to be the best father our daughter could ask for. But then I remembered whose hand he had been holding when I found him. He stood in the doorway, looking exhausted. "I'm sorry," he whispered. He tried explaining everything. He said it had just happened. He insisted it had been a mistake that got out of control. He claimed they never intended for anyone to get hurt. He begged me to believe that he still loved me. I listened without interrupting. When he finally finished talking, I looked him directly in the eyes and quietly said, "Mistakes don't last 8 months." The room fell silent. Mistakes don't involve hidden meetings. Mistakes don't require secret phone calls. Mistakes don't book hotel rooms. And mistakes certainly don't betray a pregnant wife while she's preparing to bring your child into the world. That night, Michael slept on the couch. Not because I yelled at him. Not because I threw him out. Because he couldn't bring himself to walk into the bedroom we had once shared without feeling the weight of what he had done. Long after he fell asleep, I picked up his phone. For years, I had never once felt the need to look through it. That night was different. I wasn't searching for reasons to forgive him. I was searching for the truth. It didn't take long. Hidden beneath a fake contact name was an entire conversation thread. Hundreds of messages. Late-night conversations. Deleted photos that had been backed up to the cloud. Hotel confirmations. Restaurant reservations. Plans they thought I would never discover. Every swipe across the screen uncovered another lie. Every message felt like another crack spreading through my heart. I wanted to stop reading. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Instead, I kept going, because I deserved to know exactly who I had been married to. By morning, something inside me had changed. The woman who had driven to the hospital terrified and heartbroken was gone. In her place stood someone calm, someone focused, someone who understood that this wasn't only about a cheating husband anymore. It was about protecting my daughter. I wasn't going to raise a little girl believing that love meant accepting betrayal. I wasn't going to teach her that a woman should stay silent simply because leaving was painful. She deserved a mother who knew her own worth, even when the people closest to her had forgotten it. So, I made a decision. I wouldn't react emotionally. I would respond intelligently. Over the following weeks, I became the last person Michael expected me to be. I stayed calm. I stayed polite. And I quietly gathered every piece of evidence I could find. Before he had the chance to erase anything, I saved screenshots of suspicious messages. I photographed hotel confirmations I found tucked inside the glove compartment of his car. I copied bank statements showing expenses that had never been mentioned. Every discovery painted a clearer picture of a double life I had never imagined existed. Then I found something even worse. Buried deep inside his voicemail folder was an old voice message from Emily. He had forgotten to delete it. Her voice was soft, almost playful, and within seconds it became painfully obvious this wasn't the beginning of their relationship. They already had inside jokes. They already had memories together. They already spoke like two people who had been hiding a secret for a very long time. One sentence stopped me cold. It revealed that whatever they had started, it had begun before I was even pregnant. I sat there staring at the phone in complete silence. The timeline I had desperately hoped wasn't true had just become undeniable. Every new piece of evidence felt like another knife twisting deeper into my chest. But I refused to stop, because I remembered something my father had taught me years earlier. Before retiring, he had spent decades working as a respected family court attorney. Whenever people let anger control their decisions, he would always say the same thing: never walk into a fight without proof. For the first time in my life, I truly understood what he meant. I wasn't collecting evidence out of revenge. I was protecting my future, my daughter's future, and the truth. Quietly, I also reached out to a few close friends and trusted relatives. I wasn't trying to spread rumors or destroy anyone's reputation. I simply needed to understand how long this betrayal had been hiding in plain sight. I asked careful questions, listened more than I spoke, and slowly, uncomfortable pieces of the story began falling into place. What I discovered left me more shocked than anything I had already learned. Emily had stayed at our house several times during the early months of my pregnancy. She told everyone she wanted to help me through the difficult first trimester. She cooked dinner with me, helped decorate the nursery, rubbed my aching back, laughed with me about baby names, and promised she couldn't wait to become the world's favorite aunt. Now I couldn't stop wondering how many times she had looked me in the eyes, smiled, and lied without feeling even a hint of guilt. She had shared meals at my table, held my hand during doctor's appointments, celebrated my pregnancy, all while secretly destroying the family I believed we were building together. The weight of that realization nearly crushed me. For days, it felt impossible to breathe without feeling the pain pressing against my chest. Every memory had been rewritten. Every promise Michael had ever made sounded hollow in my mind. Every conversation with Emily replayed itself with a completely different meaning. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It reached into every part of my life, stealing moments I had once believed were genuine. But somewhere beneath all that heartbreak, something unexpected happened. The pain slowly transformed into determination. I realized I had two choices. I could let their betrayal define the rest of my life, or I could decide how my story would end. I chose the second. I wasn't going to explode in anger. I wasn't going to beg for explanations that would never be honest. And I certainly wasn't going to spend the rest of my life protecting the people who had never protected me. Instead, I made a promise to myself. I would reveal the truth so completely that neither Michael nor Emily would ever be able to rewrite it. Not for revenge. Not for humiliation. But because lies only survive in silence. And I was finally done being silent. Over the next 2 weeks, I planned everything carefully. Every document was organized. Every screenshot was printed. Every receipt was placed in chronological order. Every message was backed up in multiple places. If anyone questioned my story, I wanted the facts to answer for me. As fate would have it, my family had already planned a baby shower for that same weekend, a celebration that was supposed to welcome new life into the world. Relatives were traveling from different cities. Friends had already RSVP'd. Decorations were ordered, gifts were wrapped, and everyone was excited to celebrate the arrival of my daughter. Ironically, the two people responsible for destroying my family were both expected to be there. Emily accepted the invitation without hesitation. She acted as though nothing had happened. She still texted cheerful messages in the family group chat. She still talked about becoming the baby's favorite aunt. She still smiled in every conversation as if she weren't carrying the biggest secret in the room. Michael agreed to attend as well. By then, he was desperately trying to repair his image. He avoided difficult conversations, hoping that if enough time passed, the truth would simply disappear. He believed silence would protect him. He had no idea that silence was exactly what I had been using to prepare. The morning of the baby shower, before a single guest arrived, I invited my parents into the living room. Without saying much, I handed them a thick folder. Inside were printed text messages, hotel reservations, phone records, bank statements, photos, the voicemail transcript, and a complete timeline showing exactly how long the affair had been going on. Neither of them interrupted while reading. My mother's hands trembled so badly that several pages slipped onto the floor. Tears filled her eyes long before she reached the last page. She looked completely heartbroken, not only for me, but because her own daughter had played such a devastating role in destroying our family. My father remained silent. His expression never changed. But I noticed his jaw tighten with every page he turned. I had rarely seen him angry. That morning, I saw disappointment that ran even deeper than anger. When he finally closed the folder, he quietly looked at me and asked only one question. "Are you absolutely certain?" I nodded. I wish I wasn't. He took a slow breath, placed one reassuring hand on my shoulder, and simply said, "Whatever happens today, you won't face it alone." Those words gave me more strength than I can ever describe. Soon the house filled with laughter. Children ran through the hallway. Music played softly in the background. Relatives admired the nursery decorations. Wrapped gifts piled higher and higher beside the dining table. From the outside, everything looked like the perfect family celebration. Emily walked through the front door carrying a beautifully wrapped gift and greeted everyone with a bright smile. She hugged me. She actually hugged me. For one brief moment, I wondered how someone could lie so effortlessly while looking directly into the eyes of the person they had betrayed. Michael arrived shortly afterward. His arm was still in a cast from the accident, and he looked uncomfortable from the moment he stepped inside. Every few minutes, I caught him watching me, trying to read my expression. I gave him nothing. No anger. No tears. No hints. Just calm silence. The party continued exactly as everyone expected. People laughed. Photos were taken. Games were played. Dinner was served. Finally, the cake was placed in the center of the room. Everyone gathered together as Emily picked up a glass to make a toast. She smiled confidently and said, "To Sarah, Michael, and the beautiful little family they're about to welcome." Before she could finish, I slowly stood up. "Before we continue," I said calmly, my voice surprisingly steady despite my racing heart, "I think everyone here deserves to know the real reason Michael ended up in the hospital last month." The room fell completely silent. The music suddenly seemed louder than anyone's breathing. Emily's smile disappeared instantly. Michael's face lost every trace of color. No one said a word. Every eye turned toward me. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I didn't insult anyone. Instead, I calmly placed the folder on the dining table. One by one, I explained everything. The phone call from Officer Daniels. The hospital room. Finding Michael holding Emily's hand. The text messages. The fake contact names. The hotel bookings. The financial records. The voicemail. The timeline. Months of deception. Months of lies. Months of betrayal. I spoke slowly and clearly, allowing the evidence to tell the story far better than anger ever could. Nobody interrupted. Nobody needed to. The proof spoke louder than my voice ever could. A wave of shocked gasps spread across the room. One of my aunts covered her mouth with both hands. My uncle stared at Michael in complete disbelief. My grandmother quietly set her coffee cup down, unable to take her eyes off Emily. The disappointment on her face was impossible to miss. Several relatives began flipping through the printed messages themselves. The silence became unbearable. Finally, Emily tried to speak. "This isn't the whole story." Her voice shook. She insisted people didn't understand. She claimed things were complicated. She even suggested Michael, and I had already been having problems. But every excuse collapsed beneath the evidence. The dates didn't lie. The messages didn't lie. The receipts didn't lie. The voicemail didn't lie. And for the first time since this nightmare began, neither did I. Michael never even attempted to defend himself. He sat perfectly still, staring at the floor as though looking up would somehow make everything worse. Maybe he finally understood there was nothing left to deny. Maybe he realized the life he had built on deception had finally collapsed. Or maybe he simply knew that some mistakes are too great for forgiveness. Whatever the reason, he remained silent. That afternoon didn't just expose an affair. It changed our family forever. Some relationships ended the moment people walked out that front door. Others were damaged in ways that could never fully heal. As painful as it was, I also felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Relief. The truth was finally out. I no longer had to carry it alone. The following week, I officially filed for divorce. Thanks to the detailed evidence I had carefully documented, including the affair, financial records, and the timeline of deception during my pregnancy, my attorney was able to present a strong case. The legal process was still emotionally exhausting, but I walked into every meeting prepared, organized, and determined to protect both myself and my daughter. The outcome was far different from what Michael had expected. The settlement favored me. I kept the home that was meant to be my daughter's first safe place. More importantly, I walked away with my dignity intact. Michael lost far more than property. He lost the trust of almost everyone who had once believed in him. Family members who had admired him now struggled to even look him in the eye. Friends who had defended him quietly distanced themselves after learning the truth. The respect he had spent years building disappeared in a matter of days. And unlike the lies he had told for months, those consequences couldn't be hidden anymore. In the weeks that followed, the consequences reached far beyond my marriage. News of what had happened spread through the family far more quickly than I expected. Not because I tried to humiliate anyone, but because the truth has a way of finding its own voice. Emily suddenly found herself facing the same questions she had spent months helping Michael avoid. Every family gathering became uncomfortable. Every conversation carried an unspoken tension. Eventually, unable to bear the disappointment and constant reminders of what had happened, she packed her things and moved to another city, hoping distance would give her a fresh start. For a long time, I mourned the loss of my sister almost as deeply as I mourned the loss of my marriage. She wasn't just my sibling. She had been my childhood best friend. We had shared birthdays, holidays, late-night conversations, secrets, dreams, and countless memories that stretched back to our earliest years. Losing her felt like losing an entire chapter of my life. People often asked whether I hated her. The truth was more complicated. I didn't wake up every morning filled with anger. I woke up grieving someone who no longer existed in my life. That pain stayed with me for a long time. But something else disappeared. The guilt. For months, I had questioned myself, wondering whether I had missed signs, whether I should have been a better wife, whether I had somehow caused everything to fall apart. Eventually, I realized something important. Their choices belonged to them, not to me. And carrying responsibility for another person's betrayal only delays your own healing. 3 weeks after the baby shower, my daughter finally arrived. After everything my heart had endured, hearing her first cry felt like the beginning of an entirely new life. The moment the nurse placed her in my arms, the world became quiet again. She was perfect. Tiny fingers, bright, curious eyes, a peaceful little face that knew nothing about the pain that had existed before she entered the world. In that moment, I made another promise. No matter what had happened between the adults in her life, she would grow up surrounded by honesty, stability, and unconditional love. I named her Grace, not because life had been graceful, but because I wanted her name to remind me that new beginnings are always possible. Grace represented hope after heartbreak, peace after chaos, dignity instead of bitterness. Every time I called her name, it reminded me that my future no longer belonged to my past. The first year wasn't easy. There were sleepless nights, court appointments, single-parent responsibilities, moments when exhaustion made me question whether I was strong enough to do everything alone. But every morning, I looked into my daughter's eyes and found another reason to keep moving forward. She became my greatest source of strength without ever realizing it. Several months after the divorce was finalized, Michael reached out. At first, it was a short message, then another. Eventually, he asked if we could meet. He apologized. Not once, not twice, many times. He admitted he had destroyed the best thing that had ever happened to him. He said he wished he could erase every decision that had led us there. He asked if there was any chance we could start over. Years earlier, I might have believed those words. Now, I simply listened. Some apologies arrived too late. Not because forgiveness is impossible, but because trust, once completely broken, cannot always be rebuilt. I chose not to reopen the chapter we had already closed. However, there was one decision I made that surprised many people. I allowed Michael to have limited, supervised involvement in Grace's life. That choice wasn't made for him. It wasn't because I forgot what he had done. And it certainly wasn't because I believed everything was suddenly okay. I made that decision because of my daughter. Children deserve the opportunity to know both parents whenever it can be done safely and responsibly. His failure as my husband didn't erase the possibility that he could become a better father if he was willing to earn that role over time. The boundaries were clear. Trust would not be given freely again. It would have to be earned through consistent actions, not promises. As for me, healing didn't happen overnight. There wasn't a single morning when I woke up and suddenly felt whole again. Recovery came quietly, one ordinary day at a time. I returned to hobbies I had forgotten. I spent more time with people who genuinely cared about me. I laughed again, not because life was suddenly perfect, but because I slowly stopped allowing my past to control my future. Little by little, the woman who had once walked into that hospital terrified and heartbroken became someone completely different. Someone stronger. Someone wiser. Someone who finally understood her own worth. Years have passed since that phone call. When I look back now, I no longer see it as only the worst day of my life. Ironically, it became the day my real life began. That call didn't simply expose my husband's betrayal. It exposed every truth I had been too afraid to acknowledge. It forced me to stop ignoring my instincts. It taught me that love without honesty cannot survive. And it reminded me that sometimes losing the people you thought you needed is exactly what makes room for the life you truly deserve. Betrayal changes you. There's no denying that. It leaves scars that don't disappear completely. But scars are proof of healing, not proof of weakness. Over time, I realized betrayal reveals far more than the character of the people who hurt us. It reveals our own character as well. I could have chosen silence. I could have accepted endless excuses. I could have pretended everything was normal just to preserve the appearance of a happy family. Many people expected me to do exactly that. Instead, I chose honesty. I chose self-respect. And most importantly, I chose the kind of future I wanted my daughter to witness. Because children don't learn strength from what we tell them. They learn it from what they watch us do. If you're listening to my story today and you've experienced betrayal from a partner, a sibling, a close friend, or anyone you trusted with your heart, I want you to remember something. Your pain is real. Your heartbreak deserves compassion. And your healing deserves time. But you never have to carry someone else's betrayal as your own burden. You don't owe anyone your silence simply because speaking the truth makes them uncomfortable. You don't have to remain where trust has been repeatedly broken. And you never need permission to choose peace over pretending. The road forward won't always be easy. Some days you'll feel strong. Other days you'll wonder whether you'll ever feel whole again. Keep walking anyway. One small step becomes another. And eventually, those steps lead somewhere you never imagined possible. Looking back now, I understand something I couldn't see in those darkest moments. The people who betray us often believe they've won. But in the end, they usually lose far more than the people they hurt. They lose trust. They lose credibility. They lose the respect of those who once admired them. Sometimes, they even lose themselves. The people they betrayed, however, we rebuild. We heal. We grow stronger than we ever thought possible. And one day, we wake up realizing that the chapter we feared would destroy us actually became the chapter that taught us how to begin again. That phone call changed my life forever. Not because it ended my marriage, but because it gave me the courage to stop settling for a life built on lies and start creating one built on truth, dignity, and quiet, unshakable strength.